Overproduction versus just being lazy. This is a conundrum that has plagued my music making for a long time. I was I was watching a video of John Zorn, an interview with John Zorn, the great avant-garde composer, saxophone player, and he was talking about how he was having a conversation with his mixing engineer on one of the albums, and the mixing engineer said he was very surprised when he played the rough mixes right after the end of the session. They recorded everything live, and he played the rough mixes for Zorn, and John Zorn was like, "Yeah, that's great. That's it. Send me those," and that's it. That's done. For him, that was done. And the mix engineer was kind of like taken aback by that because he wanted to work with it more and dial it in more. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't how he was doing it. And John Zorn even says in the interview, people wonder how I'm so prolific in putting out so much music. He was like, "This is how I do it. I don't overthink it too much. If it sounds good, it is good. It's ready to go. Done." And I was like, man, that is the way, because that's not how I do it. I really work it all over, and I think that it becomes this feeling of wanting to avoid feeling like you're being lazy. Like, you don't want to feel like you're just kind of short shrifting it. You're just kind of half-assing it, going through and throw it together and be done with it. It's, you think, well, this is my art, this is my thing, this is what I'm doing. I want it to be as good as possible. And so you get into this whole thing of like really going over it. I do anyway. And so, it's not the easiest thing. I felt that it's not the easiest thing to assess exactly like when the work is good enough, when it's done, when, messing around with it more is not making it any better. Because overproduction is a real thing. Like, that can happen. You can take something and you can mess around with it and try this and try that and do this to it to the point that it does like just take all the life out of it. It just ruins it somehow. And I don't want to do that. Nobody does. But finding that point of like, well, could this be better is not the easiest thing. I was reading this Rick Ruben book. The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and he's got a lot of great ideas in here. I'm just going to read some of this because these are some of the things that I've been thinking about. He divides up the process of art making into different phases, and one of the phases, the earlier phase, is of like when you're really putting the nuts and bolts together. He calls this the craft phase. You're crafting the music. And one of his ideas is that in the craft phase, there are no deadlines. He says here, if you're wanting to look it up, I would recommend reading the whole book. If you're an artist in any way, this book is a gold mine. He knows what he's doing. He says here on page 170, if you're keeping up, in the craft phase, deadlines are suggested completion dates rather than set in stone. There's still an element of surprise and exploration throughout our execution, and it's possible to find ourselves at any moment back in the experimentation phase. That's when you're really just starting a project. You kind of experiment with things, and he likes to call starting a project like this, starting a piece of music or whatever, call this experiments rather than like this heavy thing of I'm starting a work of art. You know, a blank canvas is a formidable adversary there to get rolling. And once you can get past that, it's more like filling in the blanks as opposed to beginning. And that's a lot easier. And one way to get to the filling in the blanks stage from the blank canvas stage is to think of it as an experiment rather than some big deal. So that's what he's talking about, the experiment phase. So once you get past the experiment phase and you're into the filling in the blanks phase, this filling in the blanks phase is kind of what he calls the craft phase, because now it's not creation, it's a craft work of filling in the blanks. All right, so while crafting, an artist might succumb to outside pressures to set a fixed release date for their project. So this whole thing of like a release date and all of this, that's never really been so much my problem, but this part here where he talks about crafting contains a paradox. To create our best work, we are patient and avoid rushing the process, while at the same time we work quickly without delay. And that is this working quickly part. To remain too long in this phase, many pitfalls may arise. One is disconnection. If an artist is creating a beautiful work and keeps endlessly crafting it beyond the need, sometimes they suddenly want to start all over. This can be because they have changed or the times have changed. Art is a reflection of the artist's inner and outer world during the period of creation. Extending the period complicates the artist's ability to capture a state of being. The result can be loss of connection and enthusiasm for the work over time. So he's got a lot of ideas here. Another challenge we might call demo-itis. I think we kind of all know what that is. You know, if you've ever worked with other artists, and you know, especially if you're a musician and they're like really tied to the demo, that can be tricky to bring anything else new to it. That's never been too much of my problem, but it is. It's an idea. So anyway, Rick Ruben has an idea of the creation of a work has an arc of basically 3 phases. The first phase is experimentation, he likes to call. So you're just experimenting. Experiments kind of help the idea of getting something on a canvas. A blank canvas is easy to, a blank canvas is hard to start, but filling in the blanks is much easier. So if you conceive of the first putting something on the canvas as experiments rather than some heavy thing, it makes it a lot easier to get to the second phase, which he calls the craft phase, which I like to call the filling in the blank phase, because then everything that you're doing is guided by what you've already put down. And that's a lot easier than just putting something down. But the third phase then is the completion phase. And for me, the hang-up is between the end of the craft phase and the beginning of the completion phase. That section there can take a really long time. And I'm going to read here, page 170. In the craft phase, deadlines are suggested completion dates rather than set in stone. There is still an element of surprise and exploration throughout our execution, and it's possible to find ourselves at any moment back in the experimentation phase. While crafting, an artist might succumb to outside pressure to set a fixed release date for the project. That's never been so much of a problem for me, but this part here, crafting contains a paradox. To create our best work, we are patient and avoid rushing the process, while at the same time we work quickly without delay. I think that's what Zorn's really good at there, getting this part that is the crafting phase, the mixing and all of that, because what they've done by the creation of the music has been instant through improvisation. So after that, the mixing and mastering and all of that is like the completion phase. This part here, by remaining too long in this phase, many pitfalls may arise. One is disconnection. If an artist is creating a beautiful work and keeps endlessly crafting it beyond the need, sometimes they suddenly want to start all over. This can be because they have changed or the times have changed. Art is a reflection of the artist's inner and outer world during the period of creation. Extending the period complicates the artist's ability to capture a state of being. The result can be loss of connection and enthusiasm for the work over time. For sure, that sums it up there. The other part of that is what a lot of people call demo-itis. You've heard that, where you're so like tied to some previous idea that you can't hear other ideas. Ruben says of artists, they could listen to it 1,000 times and imagine developing it to all it can be. Yet when it comes time to actually making the best version of the song, the demo may be so ingrained in their head that any changes seem to be blasphemous. When we become overly attached to a premature version of the work, we do a disservice to the project's potential. To avoid demo-itis, there's a simple technique. Unless actively working to make something better, avoid listening to it, reading it, playing it, looking at it, or showing it to friends. Work as far as possible as you can while crafting, and then step away without repetitively consuming the unfinished work. By not accepting the work in progress as the standard version, we leave room for growth, change, and development to continue. Keep in mind that it's also possible for something great to be made very quickly. An artist might spend 5 minutes sketching an idea for a project and think very little of it. They might sense the need of something great and then spend hours or years trying to develop it into something more. But it's possible that the initial sketch or demo, born all in 5 minutes, was actually the best version. That's true. I think I have come up with with my own personal way of figuring out if the work is done and avoiding this feeling of like, oh, I'm just being lazy if I don't keep going and do it more and more and more. Okay, so on page 194, Ruben gets to the heart of the whole thing. He says, when is the work done? There is no formula or method for finding this answer. It's an intuition. And his answer for when is the work done, the work is done when you feel it is. Well, for me, that's not a very good answer. It is the answer, but it's not very helpful in actually figuring anything out so far as how to proceed. So what I've figured out for myself, and maybe it would relate to you as well, but what I've figured out is that it's almost kind of a myth of being lazy about something. It's almost a myth of like, oh, I'm not doing the work because I just am too lazy to get it done. That might be true of other things, but when it comes to your art, it's not really like that. You're never gonna really do that. You might feel that's true, but you can't really be lazy about it. The flip side of that is that you can work on something so much until you can take the life out of it. You can produce it so much to the point that it takes all the life out of it. But there's also kind of a myth built into that as well, because when we do that, we always recognize it. You may not recognize it right at the initial session if you're mixing it or you're working it, but when you come back to it, you'll listen to it and you will know that like you've kind of ruined it somehow. And I've never experienced a time where I have overproduced something and not immediately realized it. So I don't think we really have to worry too much about that either. I think all of that is under the umbrella of really just putting the work off, like putting the work out into the world, getting the work out into the world. All of that thinking about like all of that. So that brings us to page 195. Rick Ruben says, art doesn't get made on the clock, but it can get finished on the clock. To some, this phase may be the most difficult part of the process. They resist letting go with a stubborn ferocity. Up until this point, the clay is soft. Everything can change. Once fixed, we lose control. This fear of permanence is common beyond art. It's known as commitment phobia. I think that's it. And I can recognize that in myself in other ways as well. Sometimes that can be a good thing, though. I was listening to this other interview of the great composer Philip Glass, and the interviewer was asking him some questions about like advice about like being a musician, a composer, and artist in general. And one of Philip Glass's recommendations or advice was to never take a job that you can't easily quit. I mean, we're talking about day jobs away from doing the art or whatever it is that you want to do. And I have absolutely gone full tilt on that. That was something that I intuitively knew a long time ago. But that does speak to like, a fear of commitment also. Which in this case, I believe is a good thing. Anyway, to go on, when the last chapter is about to end, we may create excuses to put off the completion of the work. It can be as a sudden loss of faith in the project, deciding it's no longer good enough. We find flaws that don't really exist. We make inconsequential changes. We sense the distant mirage of some better creative option that hasn't been discovered yet. And if only we just keep working it, it might arrive someday. Yeah. So to put my framework on that, I believe that when you start making changes to stuff, and it's not really clear that it's better. It's just different. And you don't get that internal kind of satisfaction of the change, making something happen within the music that you feel, that's better, or a visual work of art or whatever, where it just feels like, well, I'm not sure if that's better or not. It's like when you use plugins and you put a plug-in on that, and you put this compressor and you put that compressor, and then you do a shootout between the two, and you're like, I think this one's better, I think that's better. Or you do some kind of subtle EQ move and you're kind of like, I think that's better. If you don't know, just take all the plugins off. If you put the plugin on there and you can't even hear a difference, just take the plugin off, because there's a whole lot of snake oil salesmanship going on with mix engineers and plugins and all kinds of stuff where they bring the plug-in in and you can't even hear anything happening, and you're like, well, I guess my ears just aren't good enough. Don't buy into all that, I believe. If you can't hear it, then it's not bringing anything to your music that is meaningful to you, and ultimately what's meaningful to you is all that's important about your music anyway. Because if it's not meaningful to you, then what is it for? So, to continue, just to wrap it up here, the only art the world gets to enjoy is from creators who've overcome these hurdles and released their work. Perhaps still greater artists existed than the ones we know, but they were never able to make this leap. Releasing a work into the world becomes easier when we remember that each piece can never be a total reflection of us, only a reflection of who we are in this moment. If we wait, it's no longer today's reflection. In a year, we may be guided to create a piece that looks nothing like it. There is a timeliness to the work. The passing of seasons could dissipate the value the work holds for us. Hanging on to your work is like spending years writing the same entry in a diary. Moments and opportunities are lost. The next works are robbed of being brought to life. How many pages will be left empty because your process was dampened by doubt and deliberation? Keep this question in the front of your mind. It might allow you to move forward more freely. In an environment where nothing is permanent, we produce static artifacts, mementos of spirit. We hope they will live forever, holding resonance through each passing decade. Some might, many won't. It's impossible to know. We can only keep building. When you and the work are in sync, there's a time to put it out and move on. Each new project is another opportunity to communicate what's coming through you. It's another chance at bat, another opportunity to connect, another page filled in the diary of your inner life. I think that's great. I think I'm really inspired by John Zorn's attitude of just getting the work out there and listening to it one time down, basically. Listening to it one time through and being able to clearly hear, like, that's it. It doesn't need anything else. I think this is the way forward, and this has come about because I have a new project coming out that's a 3-volume album, and one of the volumes, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to release it that way, if it's going to be 3 separate albums under one volume. Anyway, that's more to come there. But one of the volumes it has required a whole lot of MIDI controller data that's very intricate and tedious, and the only way to really make it correct is to work the MIDI controller data. It clearly is the key to making the whole thing come across the way that I want it to. You'll hear it hopefully pretty soon. And it's completely clear that if you go in and do this kind of detailed, tedious work with the MIDI data, that it gets to the level that has the subtlety and the nuance that makes it all work. But there is also a feeling of like, this is awfully laborious, and it's certainly time consuming, but it's laborious and feels like you're really just in the computer a lot, just moving things around and this and that. And it can become a feeling of maybe I'm overdoing it because of the amount of time spent and required to get it done. But when you listen back and it doesn't sound right, it's obvious. So that whole scenario, that's another thing, but that whole scenario has highlighted this conundrum between overproducing and just being lazy. So anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Tell me what you think. How do you make it? How do you make your music? How do you get it done? And if you found this content useful, consider joining me over at my Patreon. Your support there is most appreciated. But more than that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications. That helps me the most. All right, and as always, thanks for listening. About the comments, I just want to throw this out there. In case you leave me a comment and I don't respond, it just happens to be that I no longer, for whatever reason, get any kind of notification when somebody leaves a comment. It used to be that happened. I would get an email every time showing the comment, but ever since I, interestingly enough, as soon as I posted the video about the whole situation with the Palestinians and Gaza, and about Trump and being blacklisted and all that business, just like that, no more YouTube comments coming into my inbox. That happened. So anyway, I try to go in and look it up and see if somebody has left me a comment, but sometimes I forget about that, and it's a couple of weeks before I get around to checking it out, because you have to go in and dig around and find out if there's any new comments there. Anyway, just throwing that out there. It's not that I am not wanting to respond, but I just don't get the notifications anymore. But anyway, thanks for commenting, and see you next time.